It was French novelist Marcel Proust who said, "The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes." It's not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. His words remind us that travel is more than physical movement from place to place. It's about the transformation of the traveler. Every flight, every drive, every journey offers us a chance to step outside our familiar surroundings and return with a broader, more empathetic perspective on the world, something we all can benefit from. On behalf of Boston College and the Carroll School of Management, welcome to the Boston College Chief Executives Club. In the complex world of global aviation and infrastructure, the voyage is defined by more than just runways and schedules. It is built on the promise of human connection, something JetBlue's foundational mission supports, as they say, to inspire humanity both in the air and on the ground. It's the belief that a more mobile society is a more enlightened one, and that every flight is an opportunity to bring people closer to the ideas and cultures from around the world. We will next gather in 3 weeks on February 26th, when we welcome the President and CEO of the World Economic Forum, Borje Brend. He just will be joining us from hosting Davos recently. A couple things went on there, so we're looking forward to having his perspective. He will be hosted by a former keynote speaker of ours, the Chairman and CEO of Bank of America, Brian Moynihan. Then, we're thrilled to announce that on April 23rd, we will welcome the President of the NCAA and former Governor of the Commonwealth, Charlie Baker, who will join us. He will be hosted by Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy. Now for today's program, our host is Rich Davey, the CEO of Massport. Rich oversees a massive transportation network with revenues over $1.25 billion. That includes Logan Airport and the Port of Boston. Massport's mission is connecting Massachusetts and New England to the world to support the Commonwealth's economic, transportation, and climate goals. From airports to maritime facilities to real estate, Massport's facilities generate $22 billion in economic revenue annually. Before joining Massport, he served as the president of the New York City Transit, was a partner at Boston Consulting Group, served as the Massachusetts Secretary of Treasury under Governor Deval Patrick, and as general manager of the MBTA. So take it slow with him, he's just getting a hang of transportation. He is a proud graduate of the College of Holy Cross and earned his JD from Gonzaga University, another outstanding Jesuit institution. Of course, our keynote speaker today is Joanna Geraghty, President and CEO of JetBlue. Joanna made history in 2024 as the first woman to lead a major United States airline. Since joining JetBlue in 2005, she has served in nearly every corner of the business, from Associate General Counsel to Chief People Officer to President, and most recently to President and CEO. Under her leadership, JetBlue continues to focus on its mission of inspiring humanity while navigating the evolving challenge of the aviation industry. Before joining JetBlue, Joanna served as a partner at the law firm Holland & Knight. Like Rich, she too earned her BA from the College of Holy Cross, a master's in international studies from Syracuse University, and a JD from New York University. So for the first time ever, let someone from Boston College warmly welcome 2 crusaders, 2 lawyers, and 2 leaders who ensured that our voyages of discovery are possible. Rich Davey and Joanna Geraghty.
So what's top of mind today? So it's been a rough couple of years for JetBlue. We spent a lot of time with our friends at the Department of Justice, trying to do a number of different transactions, and we're now kind of emerging from some dark days there with a plan to return to profitability over the next couple of years. So that's kind of front of mind. I think the macro economic backdrop and some of the exogenous factors that hit this industry are also front of mind. Last year for the industry, but even for JetBlue in particular, it was definitely a dynamic year. We started with a pretty big setback on the industry in terms of customer demand. The tariff situation scared customers, so while the consumer remained healthy, people kind of stopped taking that second leisure trip as they kind of waited to see how things unfolded. And then you had the government shutdown. We had an Airbus safety recall. And then we started this year with Venezuela. And JetBlue is the carrier most impacted by that. We had 20,000 customers disrupted in a day. I think the good news is most of that has rebounded, and most people now know that Aruba and Curacao are in Venezuelan, near Venezuelan airspace. So it's definitely been a dynamic year, and I'm looking for some calmer waters this year. We have a great plan. We just need the macro backdrop to cooperate.
So maybe tell me a little bit about that plan, or tell us a little about that plan.
Yeah, sure. The plan's called Jet Forward, and it's really focusing on how do we identify areas that our customers want us to lean into. So we'll be introducing a first-class product across our entire fleet later this year. So we know that's a gap in the customer experience that we have, and so we'll start rolling out a first-class product in addition to our Mint platform in Q3. We've got a whole set of initiatives around reliability that really underlies everything. JetBlue flies in the most challenged airspace of any carrier in the United States. 80% of our flights hit the Northeast. So when you hear about air traffic issues, we are the first on the Hill screaming that we need reform in that regard. And we've been doing it for 10 years. I think the good news is we're seeing some progress. The proof will be in the pudding as air traffic gets modernized. So that's a big piece, is operational reliability, and some really nice progress there. We're back on top with our customer scores. Our net promoter score is up double digits in the last 2 years. So we are back in it. And then there's a whole series of initiatives. We just launched our partnership with United Airlines called Blue Sky. So that will give customers more utility with TrueBlue and allow you to book JetBlue flights off of United.com and vice versa. And then a whole series of revenue initiatives that Marty and the team are in charge of implementing over the next several years. So a lot of action. We've got 5,500 crew members in Massachusetts. We fly to 70 destinations. We have about 130 flights a day. So a big operation here. And it's all mainline flying, not regional flying, like somebody else I know that has 60% of the flights that are all regionals. Sorry,
you care to out them, or no, not at all? Okay. I've heard you talk a little bit about, and Marty too, for that matter, around customer experience. Right? I mean, JetBlue has had, I think, the reputation of being that sort of startup, scrappy, fun airline, and I think part of what I've heard you say is you kind of want to get that swagger back. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing with your crews. You know, obviously here in Boston, you've done some interesting things down in New York, but tell us a little more about getting that swagger back, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, JetBlue is known as just a brand customers love. And, when you kind of face challenging times, everybody we hear is about kind of get JetBlue back in action. We really want to see you guys profitable. You're a huge force for competitive change in the airline space. When we go into markets, fares drop. When we pull out, fares go up. So we want to be strong, but we want to be fun. And we've built our brand on just treating people well. Not nickel and diming. We've got obviously live television across our fleet. We're the only airline that has free Wi-Fi across the entirety of the fleet. Oh, by the way, and we've had it for over a decade. And, Wi-Fi's Wi-Fi. Sometimes, there's a little bit of a glitch, but it's Wi-Fi. And, we've got a great customer experience. We have our Even More Space product, our Mint product, which is fantastic. We've just started flying in the last couple of years to Europe with an emphasis on Boston and a number of destinations there. And then it comes down to our crew members. We have a great culture. We talk about inspiring humanity at JetBlue. We're a values-driven culture. And we're really focused on making sure our crew members realize that you can have all these great parts of the product, but they're the ones that make the difference. And when you think about a customer experience in your own life, you don't really remember the TVs or the food, but you remember the person. You remember how they made you feel. And that's a really important part for us with our in-flight and our airport experience and our pilots, because they have a really great opportunity to make a lasting memory for our customers that fly.
That's great. We can be a little parochial here in Boston. So let me turn my question to Boston. Your commitment, JetBlue's commitment to Boston and Worcester for that matter. Talk a little bit about that and maybe, sure, you've spent time here, you went to college here, but you're not just making a heart decision, you're making a wallet decision too. Why is Boston such an important part of your network?
We have been committed to Boston since we started flying here. We don't go in and out, we're committed. Others have gone in and out, we're not going in and out. We have made an investment in our brand and our people, the routes that we fly, the terminal. We're going to be opening a lounge in Q3, which should be fantastic for your Mosaic 4. You can get in. If you're not, Marty can get you the credit card application afterward.
Will you give us a sneak peek of what the club will look like? No?
I know so much about it, but Marty's giving me the don't do it. And Stephanie, no.
My guess is there'll be a little sports in there somewhere. That's my guess. No, not at all. Well, apparently not. Okay.
But Boston is, New York, we're New York's hometown airline, but Boston's our second home. And if you saw the livery that we just launched, Boston Strong, that's a fantastic example of how we really want to be part of Boston's community, and we want to be authentically Boston. I mean, we serve Dunkin' Donuts coffee, but it's something that we're not leaving. We're going to stay. We're going to fight for Boston. We're going to continue to deliver a great experience because we fundamentally know the customer experience that we deliver and our people are the ones that make the difference, and they're better than everybody else.
That's great. I want to shift a little bit maybe to sustainability, which has been, a hot topic, maybe a little less so in the current environment in Washington, D.C., but that's not going to change despite folks wanting that to go away. Talk a little bit about both JetBlue's commitment, but overall the aviation and maybe industry's need to evolve and to change and to be part of that sustainability conversation.
Yeah, I think the two biggest areas when we think about sustainability that are the most impactful for the airline space are air traffic modernization. Yep. If you can get those planes to fly a shorter period of time from point A to point B, that drives significant fuel savings. And then SAF. And JetBlue's really been a leader in SAF. I mean, we're the first airline with SAF in New York, but the government needs to participate, both Massachusetts, but also the federal government, because the cost of SAF is significantly higher than Jet A, and when you think about customers willing to pass that cost on, it doesn't really exist. I mean, we talk about carbon offsets and whether customers are willing to pay for those features. They're not. They want a cheap ticket price. So we're going to need the government to help fund that. We're going to need more production. You're going to need facilities at Logan Airport to support that. So it's a big investment, but the industry will not get to where it needs to without that kind of infrastructure and without sort of some of those tax breaks that are associated with it.
And folks in the room should know that the governor in her budget did have a SAF tax credit for the first time ever. And thanks to JetBlue and some of those other folks we won't name, help to get that moving. So our goal is to not only make it more economically feasible for SAF to be purchased, but also, to your point, there's some really interesting economic development happening in Massachusetts around that question as well. Maybe taking a step back and just asking about sort of the macro pressures for the aviation industry generally, right? There have been some challenging times, tariffs, obviously, production. Pratt & Whitney's been challenged for sure. A little more about where you see the industry, broadly speaking, in 26, in 27, at least in the short term. What should we expect? What should these business leaders expect? What should we expect as customers?
I think right now everybody's seeing a very healthy demand environment, and so that's great. But that can change at the drop of drop of a dime. So we're very focused on trying to ensure a level of stability in the macro context. When we see news about Canada and tariffs, that's very concerning for JetBlue and for other airlines because we take a number of our planes out of Canada. So that would just drive additional tariffs. We're getting tariffs on steel and aluminum. So while the U.S. has a trade surplus that flows to the U.S. on aerospace, and aircraft newly delivered are actually exempt from tariffs, replacement parts and things that have steel and aluminum in them are not. uniforms are not. So as an airline that's trying to return to profitability, the incremental tariff costs that we have in our budget this year are really challenging. Other carriers are seeing those same things, but I think when you're really trying to turn something around, that's a big hit in the year. We just want stability. There's a government there was a government shutdown. That's challenging. We really want, if that becomes an issue down the road, controllers, TSA agents to get paid for their work. They're essential, in our mind, essential employees. They're currently carved out. We're definitely advocating for putting those types of things in legislation. So in the future, if this type of situation happens, the American public and all of you are not put sort of in the crosshairs of the government's inability to reach consensus on certain issues. So stability is sort of the headline. We want stability so that we can ensure this year is much smoother than last year. Last year we thought COVID was bad. Last year was tough, and it just kind of kept going. So stability.
You don't think there won't be another government shutdown in the future?
I'm not going to guess at this point.
Anyone want to place a wager on that? I wouldn't. You tease us a little bit, which is the question, I think that it may be just a little primer on this, which is the air traffic control system in the United States, right? I'm not sure people, I've had the opportunity as of you to go up to an FAA tower, and the controllers do an amazing job, but the technology they're using is Atari
1970s?
Or less than Atari, maybe Commodore 64.
Commodore, maybe PC Junior, I don't know.
The students in the back have no clue what we're talking about, but those who played Moon
Paper
Patrol,
strips.
which is now, exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe, it is safe, but putting that aside, it's not efficient.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how that impacts, again, your bottom line, customers' experience, and more importantly, just, how we're portrayed globally as a powerhouse, but in aviation, we're, as you 50, 60 years behind.
Yeah, I think starting with, it's safe. It is safe. Our controllers do an amazing job. And one of the ways they manage safety is by slowing everything down. Yeah. So when you see fog, when you see weather, the controllers' work burden becomes much higher. And so they just increase the spacing between aircraft. They put something called miles and trails in place. And at some point, airlines have to cancel because you just run out of hours in the day. Some airports have curfews. Some airports have closing times. I think LaGuardia's got like a midnight closing time. So customers get angry when we divert a flight at 11:30 p.m. to JFK and not LaGuardia. It's because the airport's closing. You have a customs cutoff date. We have sometimes clearing customs on Boston flights through JFK and then flying up to Boston because customs isn't available in Boston. But it's safe, and that's where you get delays from. And as much as I think we become great at predicting weather is still really hard to predict. And the line between when you can operate and when you can't operate is still pretty fine. I look at Ed Frenny, ice pellets. That's like everybody's worst nightmare is ice pellets because you cannot take off in ice pellets. But whether you're going to see that in the day, maybe, maybe not. And so that lack of predictability makes planning, it makes the customer experience hard. We see delays, we recognize how painful it is, but it's not for lack of trying to work through that. So air traffic, there are so many wonderful things that could happen from a more modern system that would eliminate the number of delays. One of the biggest challenges is we're understaffed. So when you have a certain number of flights every day handled by a certain number of controllers, when somebody calls out because they're sick, that just puts the burden on others. And so with better technology, you would actually be able to balance that workload a bit more. You would actually be able to attract more talent. I have a 17-year-old. I can tell him he would have zero interest in working on the types of computers that are in these air traffic control centers because they are the least inspiring type of equipment. So there's a whole host of issues that, could happen if we were able to improve this. There's about $12 billion that's been approved in Congress for modernization. We probably need twice that to get there, and it's a multi-year path. Yeah. And then the costs that it drives. With these delays, we have to carry extra pilots, extra in-flight, the cost of disruptions, the snacks you see. It all adds up over time. We carry a significantly larger number of pilots during peak periods and during volatile weather periods like thunderstorms in the summer to make sure that we can continue an operation when you start seeing ATC delays. You don't always know when you're going to see them, though, and you can get call-outs or weather pops up. So it's a very challenging environment that drives meaningful costs for airlines that have large footprints in environments that are susceptible to these types of delays. Europe has a very different weather sort of environment, better tools. there's a path, but I think the good news is that there's a focus now on this. I think for years we would be pounding our chest about ATC and there wasn't much attention. Now there's a lot of attention around it. Unfortunately, that attention stemmed from the American Airlines plane crash, which it should not have. But now it's like, take this moment, seize it, and let's become one of the most efficient airspaces in the world and not something to be embarrassed about.
I was down in DC the last couple of days talking to a number of members of Congress about our tower here in Boston. Opened in 1973. Lisa's nodding. The tower is so old that it opened with a bar in it in 1973. That is true, by the way. I didn't drink there. I wasn't old enough. But getting a sense of the infrastructure needs and notwithstanding all the great work that the pilots do, that air traffic controllers do, that the team at Massport and our airline partners do.
It's amazing what they do every day.
It is pretty amazing. I want to shift a little bit maybe to aircraft and technology. So one of your growth strategies, JetBlue's growth strategies, particularly here in Boston, is to have introduced new aircraft, right? And so, but with that, again, for the industry, had also come challenges with Pratt Whitney and some of the, not only the engine issues, but talk a little bit about maybe some supply chain challenges that you've had, the industry's had, and how you're grappling with that. And then again, how you see the future in the coming, 6 to 18 months.
Sure. Yeah. So we're an all Airbus operator. So we operate A320, A321 aircraft, and A220 aircraft. The A220 aircraft are our newest aircraft. So the old Embraer 190s, the 2x2 seating, which you all saw a lot of here, they're now all being moved to A220s, which are 140 seats, 2x3 seating. Better customer experience, really sort of trying to get that wide body experience in a smaller cabin, great TVs, et cetera. We have a new engine on both our 321 aircraft and on our 220s called the geared turbofan. These engines have some challenges associated with supply chain issues and inspection that needs to be done, which was not anticipated. So that's created a real backup in terms of the ability to put these things through inspection because there's not enough capacity in the shops that do the inspections. So this has been a very significant drag on JetBlue and other airlines. Spirit, for example. At one point, Spirit had 60 aircraft grounded on a fleet of about 200 because of this geared turbofan engine, because they were waiting in inspection. There was just not enough throughput. We've got about 8 aircraft on the ground right now. That number will be sort of around there for the next year or so. But it's very challenging because we paid for these planes. We want them to fly. They just sit and we're not able to get any revenue. But yeah, we have all the costs associated with the ownership of these aircraft. So we love the new technology. It will get there. The good news is, it is a safety first industry. If you look at, knock on wood, the safety record of the airline industry and what we've been able to accomplish over the last 30 years, it's remarkable. But it's one based on self-disclosure. It's one based on ensuring that when mistakes happen, people come forward. Airbus had a pretty significant recall on software back in the November timeframe. It was specifically actually safety software that we had rolled out across a large portion of our fleet. That had to be rolled back and recalled, which drove grounding of a significant portion of our fleet over a 2-day period. But at the end of the day, we recognize that that's the priority. It has to be the priority. And with these new technologies, I think people are recognizing, particularly in the Airbus situation, the ability to push software updates. In some cases, we could. In some cases, equipment didn't allow you to push and you had to remove it from the plane to upgrade it, which is not optimal. So just a lot happening there. And then supply chain. There hasn't been the recovery in supply chain since COVID that we need to see. It's getting better. But when you have a geared turbofan inspection, that puts a lot of pressure on the supply chain for the parts that are needed to be put into the engines to address those situations. So a lot. Frustrating, though, as an airline, sort of the bottom part of the food chain, and having to deal with all of these cost challenges and lack of revenue associated with grounded fleets.
Feels like there's light at the end of this tunnel, though.
I hope so.
Okay.
I hope so, yes.
So if you had the ear, I should say, of an airport CEO, what would you be advising he or she to be investing in? Like what infrastructure, where, as both a customer yourself, but also an airline CEO, what should Newark, LaGuardia, what should we be investing in to make, your product and our relationship even stronger?
So I'm going to first start with costs. So I think the most important thing in airports
Hold on one second. My team, are you writing this down? They know that I yell about costs, and it's not just because I'm a stickler. So go ahead.
is keep your costs under control. Everybody loves big, beautiful terminals. I mean, LaGuardia, it's amazing. If you fly out of LaGuardia, it's beautiful. It is incredibly expensive to operate out of LaGuardia. So much so that we had 50 flights at one point, and we have 13 now. Newark. Newark is now the most expensive airport in the JetBlue system. London Heathrow is second. So while we're Terminal A in Newark, which is the new terminal. So while the customer experience is amazing, and concessions are great and whatnot, when the cost of operating an airport become too expensive, it puts a ton of pressure on the airline. Because as much as I would love to pass those costs on to all of you as a customer, there's 0.0 chance you're going to take an incremental, I don't know, $30 fee on your ticket because you get to see a water fountain and you have a slightly better restaurant.
So the idea of like a Bellagio style
that's a generic water fountain comment, by the way.
All right.
Generic
the
water
Rick
fountain.
Cotton water fountain. Okay. Yep.
But it is really, truly important. I mean, it's one of the reasons why, for example, we love Fort Lauderdale, because Fort Lauderdale has a very low cost of enplanement compared to Miami. And so that enables us to pass those lower costs on to our customers. And so as I look at a JetBlue in Boston, where it becomes relevant is we're a smaller airline. We need to have airport authorities that understand that we want to keep our fares low. We don't have large hub operations in cities that are in the middle of the country or down south that can offset the more significant costs in the Northeast.
Yep.
And so ensuring that smaller carriers that want to be forces for good, that want to drive competitive change, can afford to operate in those airports is really, really critical. And I'm concerned in some airports that smaller airlines are getting priced out because they're just so expensive to operate out of. Massport does an amazing job. I mean, Ed Frenny, rock star, recognizes the balance between operations, the business community, airlines, competition, and how to balance all of those pieces so a JetBlue can do well here. Rich is pretty good too. But Lisa, formerly at Massport, I mean, just you've built such a strong team there, and it goes down beyond Ed. I mean, it's not just Ed, it's the team that supports our operation. But I'll say costs are the most important thing. Customer experience is really great. You can do that, but you got to keep your costs low.
I'd be remiss. So Ed Freddy, by the way, is the aviation director, has been there 25 years. I'd be remiss if I didn't say today was his birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Ed, which he hates, absolutely hates. It's 52. It's amazing. So maybe a couple personal questions. So how does a sociology major?
Oh God, I have no idea.
From Holy Cross.
Where are we going with this?
I don't even know what sociology is, by the way. I was
Study of people in place.
So how does a sociology major from the College of the Holy Cross become the first woman CEO of a major airline in the United States?
I have no idea.
You have no idea?
My friends from Holy Cross are literally like the last person we thought would end up in a job like this, literally. I don't know. I work really hard. But I do. I mean, I really like people. And I really enjoy leading. I really enjoy seeing people succeed. We had a wonderful in-flight crew member yesterday who's been with the company 4 years. He's having his first child in September. And I look at him and I think, God, we've got to get this company profitable because you need to have a job. You need to provide for your family. You need to feel like you have a career here. And so I think I fell into JetBlue, and it's a great culture. We have a great team, but it's truly a place that wants to do right in everything that we do, whether it's operationally, whether it's the customer experience, whether it's treating our people. And when you work for a company that is guided by sort of the idea of just let's do right if we can at all times, that's a pretty special place to work. And I just, I'm so proud of my team. I'm so proud of the stories that I get around how we made a difference in somebody's life. Airline travel is amazing. And I think oftentimes we can focus on the negative stuff, which is the delays and maybe a bad experience on a flight or a lost bag. And that happens and it's not acceptable. And we're always looking to improve that. But if you pull up, there's so much more good than bad that happens in this industry. The fact that we can fly 30 5,000 feet in the air and bring 40 million customers every year all around the world for all reasons. It's truly remarkable. And if we have a little great part in somebody's journey that makes it more memorable for them or comforts them when they're traveling for, something less than, a fun event, that's amazing. And feeling like we can play a little bit of part of that, that's a lot of inspiration to get you out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, so one more question though. And transportation's not an easy industry. I've been at 25 years, and I think it hasn't been that hospitable to women in particular. Talk a little bit about, you may agree or disagree with that. That is my view. But tell me a little bit about your journey as a woman in transportation and getting to the heights of where you are today.
I haven't thought a lot about it, to be honest with you. I mean, you sort of punch through it. I mean, there's always the room you walk into. I remember one meeting in particular, we had a number of damage events that were largely driven by our business partners. And so we basically called them in on a Friday afternoon from around the country and sort of read them the riot act and made it very clear what our expectations were around the safety of their people and our equipment. And it was all men. I do remember that one meeting. I was like, oof, like all male ground handlers. And it was like a noticeable meeting. But at the end of the day, you got to surround yourself with great people. You got to surround yourself with a team that complements, your strengths, your weaknesses. And I don't think about it that much. It's not that I don't notice it sometimes, but you got to punch through it. It is what it is. It's very male oriented, maybe less so than banking. That's every time I meet with analysts and investors, there's like really very few women there.
Okay, well, that's I do business with JetBlue.
But yeah, I mean, our leadership team, actually, we have a lot of women on our leadership team. Marty's like a unique unicorn on the team in some respects. No, we have a couple men, but it's great. It's, I think just working hard and recognizing that we're all in this together, and diversity, I think, and diversity of thought, and makes for such a great team, and we all have a lot to contribute.
So before we take some questions, maybe just a round of applause for Joanna. She's been a wonderful partner.
Thank you. You guys have been great.
When Lisa announced that she was leaving Massport, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, and I got a couple calls about, would you be interested in coming back home? I'm like, no, I love New York City Transit. No, kidding.
We had dinner and talked about the subway.
And we did. And so this was one of the first people I called and said, what do you think? And thanks to you, in part, I sit here. So thank you for that.
Awesome.
Questions? Comments, rebuttals, complaints. You have rebuttals and complaints, I'll be around after.
Only compliments.
But exactly. But no, seriously, any questions? Any questions?
Thank you. Great discussion. We really enjoyed it. I'm a second-year MBA student at BC, but I would love to hear about your plans for the World Cup and how excited you are to expose JetBlue to a bunch of new international flyers and fans that are coming to the U.S.
Yeah, so I hate to disappoint. We do have plans for the World Cup, but some of it's going to depend on who makes it and where. So it's an interesting, somewhat dynamic situation. We keep pinging Marty on, what are we doing for the World Cup? What are we doing for the World Cup? We will have fun activations. We fly to a lot of the places where the games are going to be. We are not a sponsor of the World Cup. We are a sponsor of the Patriots, though. And the Red Sox. And the Bruins and the Celtics.
Yes.
Marty, I do know my Boston sports teams. Yeah. So we will add extra sections as games are won and teams kind of make their way around based upon where we think the fans are. But it'll be a little bit closer in as we see sort of the tiering or whatever it's called in soccer, like as that all shakes out. So I know that's a disappointing answer. You can bend Marty's ear. He's sitting diagonal from you if you think we're missing something.
For Marty, exactly.
How do you balance the number of mosaic versus non-mosaic that are getting on a flight?
Let them all on.
Is it theoretically possible everybody on the flight's mosaic?
You're a non-mosaic. No.
Yeah, so we let them all. So we actually started just allowing boarding for our top tier mosaics ahead of some of our other mosaics, which is hard. So we recognize everybody's special. But as we grow and as we get more mosaics, we have to start differentiating between the levels. So we now have 4 levels of a mosaic that we introduced a few years ago. A little bit controversial, but we needed to get there. And I think we're in the right place. Mosaic 4s, I think that is the tier that really drives a lot of value for JetBlue. And the lounge is responsible responsive to, I think, what we've been missing for Mosaic 4s. We continue to look at our program and make sure we're balancing all tiers. Listen, we want that Mosaic 1 to become a 2. We want the benefits for 3 to become attractive, for the 2 to become a 3, and so on and so forth. We have certain markets where there's a lot of Mosaics and others a little bit less so. But I think we do a pretty good job. The benefits are always challenging when you kind of change them or shift them around a little bit. We try really hard to do it in a way that doesn't meaningfully impact people's current plans. And with a thought to, we recognize other carriers do big things around like devaluing points and whatnot. We're very mindful of not doing things like that. But the tiering is how we're sort of addressing the volume issue in different benefits.
Blake James from Boston College, and you are a Boston College charter partner as well.
Thank you. Yes.
And so my question is going to
We want more of your flying.
Yes. How does the charter business compare to the commercial business, and where do you see that portion of the business going in the future?
It's a great question. So there's different types of charters. You have team charters. You've got charters for people who just want to charter a plane to go on vacation. You've got donor and booster charters. You've got professional sports charters. So a couple airlines actually invest with large sports franchises, meaningful improvements in the aircraft itself. So they'll actually put specific demands of collective bargaining agreements into the aircraft and redesign it. That's something we haven't entered yet. We would need the right partnership to do that because many of those sports franchises will pay for the retrofit of the aircraft. The challenge is the utility of the aircraft outside of the season becomes more limiting. So it has to be a big investment and a clear direction that we're going to, be the charter carrier for like the NFL or whoever. We do a lot of sports charters for colleges. That works out really well. The margins are good on that business, but what's more important is a lot of the sports charters are actually during the trough periods. So that enables us to kind of fill those planes when there's less customers flying. So for example, yesterday we were in Washington at the same time, 50% load factor on flights out of DCA airport. So like half those planes are going empty. That's not great for airlines. We lost a lot of money yesterday. So if we can have a charter to offset sort of the general demand environment during troughs, that is fantastic. Because we have a fewer number of planes and they're bigger, that can be a limiter sometimes for charters, but it's a business that last year we made a concerted effort to really double down in. We actually do the Syracuse charters, which is great as well. So looking to do more of that. I think we do the Islanders. They had the charter company for the hockey teams had a little bit of a bankruptcy issue. So we were able to kind of come in and swoop in and help there. So we want to continue to do more. So if you know people who want to charter, let us know. Yeah. But it's a really great trough play for us. Yeah.
So we have charter applications and credit card applications.
Exactly, yeah.
At the back of the room, if you wish. So other questions here?
Hi, my name is Odette Lino. I'm actually the Dean of the Law School at BC, so it's a particular pleasure to see two lawyers on the stage. I guess that's right, exactly. So I had a couple questions. So one was, I'm curious about the balance between cooperation and competition across different carriers, especially in this particular political moment where it seems like you really do need to do a lot of cooperation in this space. And then the second question was, the current administration seems to occasionally set its sights on different industries for particular extraction of a range of things. And I'm just wondering, in this confidential and small room, if you would be willing to share any thoughts about that?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with competition and cooperation. So we have a trade association, A4A, and all the airlines, the major carriers are a part of that. And so there are certain issues that we absolutely can align on. Airport topics tend to be, airport fees and whatnot tend to be a topic that you can align on. Regulatory issues, air traffic is a really great binding issue. It wasn't always because if you're a carrier that's not as impacted by air traffic control delays, you might be okay with having sort of an inferior ATC system. Now everybody's aligned on it. So that's great. And we all kind of cooperate on those types of topics. SAF and sustainability is an area that we cooperate on. Access issues, so access to airports internationally. So there's a lot of topics that you can cooperate on. And we also have this sort of antitrust briefing on what you can and can't do. So pricing and whatnot, obviously you can't can't touch that. But a lot of, I think, great areas. And I will tell you, I have relationships with all the other airline CEOs, and they're all great people. They have great products. There's healthy competition. We're doing a fun thing with Alaska Airlines right now around the Super Bowl. So we have the marks to the pat, so we can do more. They don't for the Seahawks, but we're having a little fun with some spirited competition there that you'll see on Instagram. So that's kind of maybe that first question. The second question, the airline industry is something people love to hate. And it is a populist person's dream. And I honestly think when you look at the Spirit JetBlue transaction, that got so much attention because air travel's personal and everybody's experienced it and everybody has a view. It's almost viewed as a kind of public utility. Nobody wants to pay any money for it. They want to just go from point A to point B for the cheapest cost possible. I'm not talking about business customers, more just everybody, which is why JetBlue tries so hard to keep our fares low, because we recognize that people love the drinks and the snacks and the TVs, but at the end of the day, the value for the fare paid is really what matters. And so as we think about Washington, it's a tough place because air travel is so personal. And by the way, everybody in DC flies as well. So it's a tough area to navigate. We saw that with our Spirit transaction that did not go through. We saw that with the Northeast Alliance with American Airlines that also did not go through. Concerns around competition. The Spirit transaction, concerns that Spirit would become JetBlue. Maybe that's a good thing. And that fares would go up. But at the end of the day, you look at where they are now, and I think probably a pretty significant error in judgment along the way on how that was handled from an antitrust perspective. It went to trial in Boston, and if you read, I encourage you to read the last paragraph of the decision. It sounds like a Bud Light commercial. Literally, it's like, people may get frustrated with Spirit, may not like the product, but this one's for you. Literally is how it sounded. And, scale is a big deal in this industry. And we're small. The partnership with United will help us gain scale. But it's going to continue to be a challenge for JetBlue. And, all of you should absolutely want competition in Boston. And I think that's where Rich and team do a really good job. But carriers like Spirit, carriers like JetBlue, if we're not around to counterbalance some of the bigger guys, that's a challenge. Now, there's a world where, maybe further consolidation might be the right path. Costs are very high in this industry, the cost of capital, it's a very capital intensive business in general. But it's a challenging industry because of the populist piece of it. And I do wonder whether that Spirit decision, if that will carry forward and people will remember that when they're looking at new deals to potentially do down the road. Because at the end of the day, you want a healthy airline industry. There is a decent amount of competition already, but it's a tough one. I mean, there's a lot of, I think, frankly, a lot of people that objected to that. A lot of people from the state, by the way, objected to that deal. Look where we are now. And by the way, JetBlue financially in a challenging situation, and scales is part of that for us. So my ask is, please fly us. We may not fly to all the destinations that you want to go because we aren't as big. But if you don't throw your money behind smaller carriers, they may not exist. And that's a really important cautionary tale because they're really great counterbalances to the bigger guys.
Thank you for the presentation. It's amazing. You run an incredibly large and diverse organization with employees from mechanics to baggage handlers to the pilots. Talk about how you ensure that last mile culture maintains the way it is, because we all have had that positive experience. You walk in that JetBlue plane and you get greeted and you laugh and you love it, and it's consistent throughout. How do you ensure that continues throughout the organization?
I mean, as you get bigger, it gets a lot harder. We were founded as a kind of values-based organization. So, we didn't sit down one day 10 years in and say, let's come up with some values. I mean, we actually started with a very clear direction around safety, caring, integrity, passion, and fun. And those were the things that were going to guide the corporation and guide sort of how we wanted to treat one another. But more importantly, how we wanted to treat our customers. And we talk about those to this day. They're on walls. It's, every crew member at JetBlue knows the values. By the way, we call our crew members crew members. We don't call them employees. We call our leaders crew leaders, not management. And that's very purposeful because we are all part of the same team. And an airline is the best example of teamwork that you can see out there. If one piece doesn't work, the rest wobbles. And by the way, sometimes one piece doesn't work and others have to step in and make up for that. But we talk a lot about our culture. Our leaders are out there all the time. We're very upfront and personal. Open door policies. I mean, I don't have a separate email that our crew members email me. Sometimes I miss them because there's a lot, but I try to get back to every crew member email and customer email if I can, or my team does. But we're out there. We're doing ticket giveaways on flights. Every leader at JetBlue, director and above, has a city that they've essentially adopted called a Leadership Connection City, and they go out once a quarter and talk about the business. They talk about safety issues that are on the minds of crew members, so that we can ensure that we're staying connected with what's going on. We're not perfect. I mean, I'm sure if you asked our crew members, they would cite a gazillion things that we can do better. But I'd say on balance, we try really hard to be pretty normal and pretty approachable and a pretty kind of an organization that every day really appreciates that you've given us your money, hard-earned money to fly from point A to point B, and we want to make sure the experience is as good as we can make it. And I think most of our crew members are wired that way. Of course, we have a few that aren't, but it really, the tone is really set, I think, across the business.
Am I getting the sign?
We have a drawing to do.
We have a drawing to do. That's right.
You are not excused yet. I know I teach sports law, and so I know that I could listen to antitrust law discussion for hours, but I suspect others may not.
I'm an antitrust lawyer, so I listen for hours.
Yeah.
You may.
We spend a lot of time with
Yes,
antitrust people in the past few years.
First of all, join me in thanking Joanna.
I thought I was going to win.
It's a wonderful conversation. I'm gonna ask you to hold.
Okay, I'm going to hold it. What's that?
I'm going to ask Rich to hold this because I'm nowhere near this. I'm going to ask Joanna after Rich absolutely
Puts my card in here. I
saw
So
seven.
this is for 2 JetBlue tickets?
This is for a plane.
It's a plane. That's what I thought. This is say it's a charter.
One of the grounded planes, one of the 8 grounded
A charter for the Patriots game. We leave Sunday morning.
No, but I think exactly. We leave Sunday morning. We come back Sunday night at 11
A
o'clock.
pair of tickets, domestic round trip.
I think we should upgrade it, right, Marty? To Mint tickets.
All right, Mint. Ooh, cool.
Pair of Mint tickets anywhere. It doesn't matter because we actually, our travel agents don't differentiate. I don't think so. International or domestic. So I think it's pair of Mint tickets anywhere.
Let me do that up again.
So it's what happens when we see you.
Just gonna be like Rich Davey.
There you go. No, I can't accept.
Here we go.
Diane Powers.
All right. Diane, where are you not going? You got 2 tickets.
Well,
Go to London, Paris. Also 4. Oh, awesome. That's so great. See?
That wasn't cool.
How many Holy Cross graduates?
do we have any auditors in the building?
Holy Cross? Any Crusaders in the house? Yeah. Get one in the back.
We have a small gift.
Oh, thank you.
Joanna, join me in thanking Joanna Rich. We will see you in a couple of weeks